What's going on, guys? Today is episode 18 of the Foundation First Fitness Show. Welcome to those of you who have not tuned in yet. Thank you very much for tuning in. And for those who are returning, I really appreciate you guys taking another listen. Let me know what you guys think. I've been really waiting to hear some feedback from a lot of you. I know there are a lot of listeners out there. My download numbers have been actually going up quite a bit. And I'm really interested to see what you guys think about that. So leave me a comment. Let me know what you guys think. And if you guys have any questions for our Q&A shows, shoot them over to me so I can get those answered for you, because I know there's tons of you that are really interested in hearing about that. So today I wanted to go over my 5 favorite lower body exercises. And the reason I really wanted to touch on that is because I deal with so many athletes that are so lower body dominant. They're such lower body dominant athletes, and I thought, you know what, I might as well just tell you guys what I use with these athletes, so that you guys can kind of maybe throw them into your workouts. Now, these aren't going to be crazy exercises. There's nothing really special about them. It's just something that I use, and I wanted to kind of go over some of the ones that I've used and the ones that I really think that are just, they're staples of my programs. It's very hard for me to kind of take them out or leave them out of a workout. And I think these are great. What's great about these exercises is that I really think that the far majority of you can apply these and use these. There's nothing really special about them. I'm more of an execution guy. You've probably all known that. If you have worked out with me, if you have seen me work, you'll know that. If you've spoken to anybody, they'll tell you that I'm more of a technique person than I am about the recipe. I'm more about the cooking process, less about the recipe. And so what I think I wanted to start off with was probably to talk about one of my all-time favorites, and I want to talk about where this came out, because I think that's really interesting. So one of my future guests, hopefully he can get here sooner rather than later. I'm talking to you if you're listening. Mark Cesari is, one of my mentors, and, we've been, I say he's my mentor, but he's more of a friend now than anything. And, when he was the first person to really introduce me, not to this exercise, obviously I've seen it before, but introduce me to kind of the understanding of why we use it. And I hate to kind of bring this up without him here, but he's taken so long to come that I have no choice. But the step up is probably the exercise that I've used the most. And the reason I've done that is simply because the amount of stability and mobility issues that it exposes and the strength benefit, it's really one of those, Swiss Army knife exercises. And I really don't think there's an exercise that can really beat that. It's really hard to find an exercise that gives so much value with so little equipment, and something that can be done anywhere. Now, it is a little bit more of an advanced exercise to be done to a perfect and, I guess, kind of complete level, where you are able to break that kind of parallel line with your thigh, and you are able to kind of maintain that nice stability of the knee, that nice position of the spine in relationship to that shin. And it's really one of those exercises that I use for so many purposes, and it carries itself through my entire workout routines with my guys through the off season. And it's really something that I've applied to, I think, really any athlete. It's so hard to find an athlete, unless you're a poker player, that it wouldn't really be beneficial for, which I still think I can make an argument for. Not that poker players aren't athletes, but that you should use a step up for them. So step up would definitely be number one. It's probably the one that I will never take out of my workouts. I've kind of tried to poke holes in this as much as I could to try to see if it was ever going to be replaced, and I really don't think it will. Now, enough of that. I want to get into the second one. The second one is a split squat. I call it a split squat. When your 2 feet are on the ground, I call that a lunge. I know that a lot of people call that would be considered a split squat if you weren't moving, and a lunge is actually you moving or taking a step. I called the other one a lunge. I call it a split squat, the one where you put your rear foot up. A lot of you term it Bulgarian split squat or rear foot elevated split squat. I really don't care. I think it doesn't really matter what we call it. call it a push-up for all it matters. As long as my clients know what I'm talking about, I don't, but just to say. So the reason I think I'm going to say rear foot elevated split squat, just so that you guys can follow, the reason I find that the reason I consider the rear foot elevated split squat such a great exercise is because I still like that it offers a significant amount of stability, but it's really that exercise that's in that midpoint between the single leg squat and, let's say, a lunge, where you're going to have a little bit more stability on we're going to have a little bit more stability than you would on a single leg squat a step up, and it's not going to be kind of offering too much instability, and it's still going to be giving you that kind of weight load that you're going to want to get, that you would potentially be getting out of a lunge. So it's going to be that midpoint between the amount of weight you can lift and the amount of instability that you're going to get from it. So it really kind of fits in a nice spot in my workouts where I can kind of go pretty heavy on it. Guys can kind of get out of it pretty quickly. They just drop the dumbbells. They can kind of escape out of it pretty quickly. It does offer a lot of stability, and it really helps me kind of teach them about, positioning in the hip, positioning at the knee, ankle, and thoracic spine. It's a little bit easier to perform than a step up because you constantly have 2 points of contact with the ground, or one with the ground, one with the pad. But still, it's probably one of those exercises that, again, will not be leaving my workouts. I really like the weights. I really like what it does, what it brings. In terms of its use, I did make a post about this on Instagram talking about the height of it. And there's a couple of things that you want to really pay attention to the technique, because it's one of those exercises that can easily go from being really good to being really bad. You can have sacral issues, you can have knee issues, and a lot of that comes from that excessive torque or that excessive stretching at the level of the hip. So you really want to pay attention to that. But aside from that, I think it's golden. Now, that brings me to another one of my exercises, the lunge. Now, the lunge is going to be kind of a little bit more onto the heavier lifting side, where both feet are on the ground. It is still going to require, I do like to throw in like a reverse lunge. I'm not a huge fan of the stepping lunge or the walking lunge or a moving lunge or forward stepping lunge. The reason I'm not a huge fan of that is because a lot of my athletes, I worry about them loading their backs like crazy, stepping forward, and then having that kind of knee cave in and the constant variation of their technique. I'd like to keep them steady. I find that if you step back, it's not as bad because it's not the weight-bearing leg, so I like to go into that direction, but I do use a lunge. I do use a forward stepping lunge. It's not that I don't use it. It's not in my favorite pile, so it's up there. It's definitely an exercise that I throw in, but I'm trying to show you or trying to give you an argument for why it's not in my top 5. But a regular lunge, a static lunge where you're not moving, or as you guys call it, a split squat, or a reverse stepping lunge, those are the two that I really like to use when I'm trying to work with an athlete who struggles with, let's say, hip mobility, where they won't be able to do two-legged exercise, two-legged standing exercise. And so I'll still need them to get a little bit of weight up. I need them to gain a little bit of strength. I'll throw them into a lunge because I can really crank that weight up. I'll get a little bit of I'll get some stability. Yes, I do get stability out of it, but it's not going to be nearly as much as I would on a step up, but I'm still going to get some stability out of it. And at the same time, what I'm going to be able to get is a lot more strength out of that exercise, and not really be too stressful on someone who has like hip issues where their back might be the problem. Moving into number 4. Number 4 is really tough for me. And I think the reason number 4 was really tough was because number 5 is kind of in a different area and doesn't really dive into these ones. But deadlifting and squatting were two that were really, really, really hard for me to kind of choose between. And the reason for that is it's a little tough for me to pick between them because they both offer good things and they both have downfalls. Now, the downfall I'll start with the deadlift, is that generally athletes will like to kind of let their ego kind of dictate that movement. So they'll try to lift a little bit more than they should be, and they do it a little bit They do it quite often, so they're just kind of compromising their back. Having said that, the squat as well does compromise the back. If you have a hip issue, if your hips are not mobile, I deal with a lot of hockey players, so hip mobility is a huge problem in that population. So if you are in that population where you have hip issues, squatting's a little bit more challenging. It's probably not going to be the greatest exercise because it's going to be putting a lot more stress on the low back, not as much on the legs as we would have liked. Now, if you have good, clean hip mobility, or if you're going to kind of elevate the heels and take some of that stress off the back, then by all means, go for it. You can squat. It's not a bad exercise. I really love it. I use it all the time. Deadlifting, again, could be another exercise if you have hip issues, because it's not going to require you to get into too much of a squatting position. You're going to be able to get that, I guess the kind of hip stability or the hip mobility is not going to be as much of a factor. But it's going to be more your ability to kind of flex and hip hinge. So bending and extending at the hip is going to be really important for the deadlift, or a little bit more important for the deadlift than it is for a squat. Now, I'm going to leave that as kind of like the four. I mean, four is kind of a bit of both, so it really depends. Like, I'll use both of them just as often. It's really going to come down to the population, and it really comes down to the individual athlete. So someone who has a little bit of hip issues, or doesn't have the leg length or the femur length, or doesn't favor a squat, I'll make them deadlift. And likewise, I'll make someone I'll make someone squat who shouldn't be deadlifting because they're not able to kind of grab it. They're short arms or whatever. Moving into number 5. Now, being number 5, it's not the one that I use the least. It's not my least favorite. It just happened to be number 5. Number 5 is really interesting for me because it's one of those exercises that I really have not been able to replace. I can't find something that's as good as it. It's really hard for me to kind of distinguish between this one and a potential other number 5, and that really comes down to the benefits on the hamstring. So a stability ball hamstring curl for me is probably up there as one of my all-time favorite exercises. I really don't see that one leaving, primarily because I think the stability ball is one of my favorite exercise or pieces of exercise equipment, because it offers, stability, it offers core control, it offers body weight control, and I can really use it for anything. It transports easy, it's cheap, it doesn't store very easily unless you want to deflate it, but it does travel easily. I mean, you could deflate it and reinflate it if you want to say that, but it is probably one of the most versatile pieces of exercise equipment that you can use. And I mean, you can throw in variations of this exercise, but the hamstring curl is really one of my favorites. And the reason I like it so much is because it's really that area that is a very important and crucial area, that ability to kind of lock everything in, lock in the core, lock in the hips, and then really generate that power from the hamstrings pulling the heel back is so crucial for a lot of running athletes. They kind of, it's often overlooked. They tend to favor the stiff leg deadlift a little bit more. And what will happen is, if you don't have that ability to really drive from the hamstrings and pull it in, you might be putting yourself in a little bit more of a compromising position. Now, if you're not an athlete and you're just an average gym goer, it's a great exercise. And all of these exercises are really good for you, even if you are just the average Joe going to the gyms trying to get in shape. Or if you're, trying to get into, trying to lose a little bit of weight, trying to put on some muscle. These are all very good exercises that can easily provide you with those. I was just trying to kind of go over the exercise that I really use a lot. So yeah, hamstring curls, to finish off with the hamstring curl. Really like that exercise. It gives me so much. It gives me core control, gives me body weight control, gives me a lot of hamstring control, which is what I want. And it's really something that can be done pretty early on in someone's experience in the gym. With someone's experience in the gym, it's not going to require as much, I guess, technical skill as a single leg squat would. A step up would. But it is definitely going to be a little bit more challenging for you to start with. So you could start with a bridge, but you're going to slide into that pretty quickly. So if you do use any of these exercises, the only thing that's really going to change from one to the other is going to be the kind of the purpose that you're going to go into it with. Are you looking to gain strength? You're going to go towards more of a two-legged exercise, squat, deadlift. If you want to be somewhere in the middle, the lunge, split squats are where you're going to be. If you want to gain some stability, step up is going to be where you're going to want to be, as well as the hamstring curl. Those are going to be more of a stability exercises as opposed to strength, because you can't really load a hamstring curl all that much unless you start kind of manipulating and you take it away from being a stability ball exercise. And so that pretty much is going to be the 5 that I would say. I know I said 6, but I'm grouping deadlift and squat together because it's so hard to pick those two apart, as I mentioned. But those are going to be the 5 to 6 exercises that I would say are my all-time favorite exercises for lower body, that I think that if you're not implementing them to some extent, unless you can't physically, because you can't possibly perform it because it's a little bit more too challenging for you, but you should really be trying to implement all of those exercises. They're great. They offer so much value. And if they're not in your workout program, definitely start working on getting them in there. My guys use them. I really have it's hard for me to find a strength and conditioning coach that hasn't used them or that doesn't use them. So definitely throw those in. I'd really like to hear what you guys think about those exercises, and let me know what you guys, what are your favorite exercises, and let's get that discussion going. I really like to see what you guys are up to, and it could be a variation of what I spoke about today, but tell me what you guys think about them. I'm really interested to hear about that. And so I think that's going to wrap up today. If you guys have any questions, you know how to reach me. Shoot me an email or message me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Leave a comment and let me know what you guys think about today's episode. I'd really like to hear back from you guys a little bit more, so definitely start engaging. Get some questions in there. Definitely leave a review. I haven't really seen a review yet. Or at the time of recording, I haven't seen a review, so let me know what you guys think. I'd really like to hear back from you guys. And until next time, guys, keep building that foundation.